Raining again. Looks like the next 3-4 days is going to be raining. I wanted to get a couple stories in. A little exhausted, but I want to just keep it going. You notice I don't tag a lot on my story times. Those aren't the quote unquote clickbaits or whatever the case may be. Not that I'm saying that I'm, focusing on that, but like, a lot of the stuff that I want, for analytics or whatever, like little, like the rattlesnake thing. I just posted a rattlesnake. I had a homie that was down there in Arizona. Hopefully he could send me some more stuff, but I made a compilation. I'm thinking about starting a new series called National Negro Graphic. And basically it's going to be black folk that's dealing with animals. I'm thinking about doing that. I might make another channel for it, but I might just make a playlist. And then if it gets big enough, then I'll just create a whole nother channel. But I got another channel that I might put a lot of that stuff on called The Hornet's Nest 5000. So I just might start rocking with that. But, either way, I think I'm probably going to end up doing that anyway. But this story right here is about Quad City Bob. Quad Cities is like the Twin Cities, but it's 4 cities. One of the cities, I think, is Moline, Illinois, Davenport, Iowa, and it's 2 other cities. Davenport, Iowa, I had a homie that said he went out there and I asked him, well, how black folks doing? And he said, man, they're not really doing the greatest or whatever, but it's all, I think, a piece of Illinois, a piece of Iowa, and then there's 2 other cities that's probably likely in Illinois and, a piece of Iowa as well. So this is about a guy, early in my career, I worked, for a nonprofit. I won't say, I don't even remember what the dude's name was, but he was kind of a, tall, out of shape, stocky white guy. Really didn't smile a lot. They gave him kind of a little nickname or a name or whatever the case may be. So, but he was working as like a maintenance person or something like that. Basically with this place, they would give felons jobs. Well, I call him Quad City Bob. And when I started talking to him, I spoke to him a couple times. I knew who he was. I was saying passing or whatever like that. But he used to come in and he would talk to different people in the building or whatever the case may be. Because I used to be in one of the main buildings. And this dude, let me tell you his story. Because there was a lot of felons working there. And there was a lot of people. This is the place where I met one of my homeboys. Though they be taking the pictures in Arizona and stuff. So I had met him there, and you see that there's been a lot of stories that I'd have made about him or, talking about, the journey and different people. And, I make stories about different people and stuff like that in my tech journey and everything else. And so this dude, he was up here in Minnesota because he was a Fed informant. I'm talking about the guy that's working there. I ain't talking about my homeboy. This dude was a federal informant. So this guy was down in the Quad Cities hustling, saying that he was a part of a gang. Now, I will tell you what gang he was in. He said that he was a GD at one point. So he was hustling with the GDs down there. And he ended up leaving Quad Cities because he worked with the feds. Now, this is something that a lot of people outside of Minneapolis may not know. There's a lot of people that do things in other cities and they end up here because they cannot stay in their other cities. Minneapolis, St. Paul, I'm going to just say it, my town, unfortunately, and that's been a thing that people have talked about. People don't have they don't have like a strong no rat policy here as it should be. Dudes can rat and walk around without getting their head knocked off. It's all, I don't know why it's been like that. And it's a bad thing, because when we go out of town to different places, and sometimes dudes do go out of town for different places, I've heard reports of having that stigma where some people were like, oh yeah, he's from Minnesota. Yeah, man, them niggas be ratting. I've heard that. I've heard that from street guys that have said that they've been out of town, and people have kind of been like, oh man, you know, they get assumed because people can come up here and they just let the rats live. Whereas other major cities, they don't let the rats live. I mean, there's rats down there too now. Don't get me confused. But you could live a little easier here doing something like that. There's a lot of them that's on the payroll, you know. So this dude told on some dudes. That's the story that he told me. Now, we figured we in a work environment, so I don't, you know, I'm not going to condemn him for that, right? Because we're in a work environment. But I'm losing respect for this dude the more I talk to him, because of what he did. And I know he can't be trusted. You see what I'm saying? So you got to understand, I was a civilian, I guess you could say. I mean, I was around a lot of people doing a lot of different things, but I wasn't doing the things that they were doing. But I knew that if I was around them and something happened, I knew that this is not what you do. You see what I'm saying? You don't tell. That's what I believed in. I knew enough to not be a Judas. I never believed in that. You see what I'm saying? So, but he was doing criminal activity, calling himself a GD under the banner of gangs. And he was selling drugs and got caught, and he told. So he's talking to me as if I'm like I have to appease his ratting. Like, you know, he's talking to me as if I'm looking at him as a respectable man. And I'm not even in that life, but I'm not really respecting him. Because whenever I hear, most of the time when I hear white gang members, I don't take them seriously. Because I know that when they throw the book, they're going to throw the book at the brothers. Remember when I'm going to see if I can pull up that video as a prime example. Do you remember when, I think this might have been a different channel that I did or something, but basically I did a podcast talking about they call them, I don't know if they were Simon City Royals or something, but they were these white GDs that I call them Confederate GD Bob. Confederate GD Bob. There's these white dudes that still fly the Confederate flag, talking about all this, racism ain't a big deal, but they GDs. They were in Mississippi, so they just kind of let these folks do crime and roam free. But the brothers got to do time and they get indicted. They not go come home like that. I'm gonna see if I could show y'all the document. But no, this dude was putting himself, he was walking around like he was somebody to be respected. He was walking around like he was somebody that you should give esteem to. Yeah, man, I was with the GDs and I was moving big weight and I was doing all this here. And I'm looking at this dude like, that's not respectful to me. And so I guess he was kind of telling me one day what happened and all that. And I said, man, you told? Yeah, man, I had a family, or I didn't want to go to jail or whatever like that. And I'm like, but he's really walking around this compound like he's somebody to be respected. And so I was talking to one of my coworkers or something like that, or, I was talking to somebody and I was like, man, that dude's a rat. That's what he is. I said, he's a rat. I really didn't want to talk to him too much, but, like the dude, The guy, you know, that's what he did. And I didn't respect him at all. You know, because not just because he was a rat, but usually when I see white guys and they be in gangs and stuff like that, I know I'm looking at it from the standpoint like, man, you could have just went downtown, man, and put on a suit. You could use that whiteness. I don't know what the hell, why. I always thought most of the time, when you have white guys that are involved in black gangs and even a lot of times they'll go, when they go to prison. Do y'all remember that gang banging in Little Rock? You had the Hoover folks or some off-brand goofy ass. This was around the height of like gang banging in 1993 Little Rock, like it was going down. They had these little goofy white folks down there, and they were acting like they were really that. And you know they could not survive in LA County or Cook County. You know if they threw them in the LA County jail or the Cook County jail, they wouldn't last a minute. And one of the guys actually said eventually he went to do some time. His homies wouldn't help him. They was kicking his ass up in Arkansas prison. He went and did time. And he was telling some of the kids like, hey man, this ain't the route to be. You know what I'm saying? So they was just doing so that's what I'm saying. Most of the time, and you look at their parents, you know, they end up joining and getting into this kind of stuff, but most of them really can't take the heat. So it's kind of, to me, it's almost like a mockery. It's some, to a certain degree, sometimes to me, I see it as almost blackface, because see, you get to take that black jacket off. When you go in front of the judge is like, hey, what you want to do? White people are not going to look at you in the way that we do. White people are going to be like, okay, well, he's white. He's just going to be able to go on and do what he do. If I do something like that, I get ostracized by my community. I have to uphold. Somebody expects me to uphold the code of the streets. You could just be this corny ass white dude that said you were moving a lot of weight, and you could say that you were with these gangster disciples. You could say that you were with these folks, and then you could just take that card right off and go right back being the white. You can move to Minnesota and everything be just fine. And nobody's going to judge you, which nobody really did. Nobody really looked at him and said that. Most of them probably wouldn't know the story because he's from the Quad Cities. But that's what I'm saying. He can just go on with his life and he doesn't have to abide by anything. As negative as the streets are, he doesn't have to uphold any kind of code of conduct or anything that he said that he would do. So that's how I looked at it. So I didn't respect him because I knew that I wouldn't have had to, you know, he's not somebody where, that's not somebody I would hang out with outside of work. And I used to kind of wonder why this dude's personality, what's off about him, what's going on. And when he told me what was going on, like, you know, I did ask him. I asked him, I say, hey, man, what's going on? Like, you know, what happened? Other people knew, but that's not really going to bother them. You know, they work. This is nonprofit. They don't care. You were already a felon, so they don't care. But I thought that was a very interesting concept, man. I might do, if I could find that video, I think I'm going to do a reaction and add the reaction onto this so y'all can see what I'm talking about. It'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind. I'm going to see if I can find it.
Back in the mid 80s to early 90s, you know.
Now this guy right here, hopefully this works out again. I got to re-record it again. He was a Simon City Royal from Mississippi. The Guardian did an article where they said over 52% of the gangs that are white, the law enforcement pretty much gives them the pass. Breaks it all down, basically says, hey, y'all could kind of commit all kinds of crimes. This dude said that he was breaking into over 200 homes. Doing stuff that the average brother in Mississippi does. And these are white GDs. These are Simon City Royals. They come under the Folk Alliance under Chicago. They moved down there. He became a captain. And he's running around talking about, well, ain't no white privilege. He said this in the article. So basically they could join black gangs like Quad City Bob, run under the guise of, run under the nose of law enforcement, commit all these crimes, say they're GDs, say they're this, say they're that, and still get away with it.
The whole gangster disciple vice lord thing was all over Jackson real hard. If you didn't scream something, you was a lame, you was a square.
On top of that, I seen some documentary, or it was one of the articles years ago, and I thought that was very strange, where he had the Confederate flag. So that's why I made that comment about GD Confederate Bob. I made a program years ago about that. And I was kind of just thinking to myself, so you could run under the nose of blacks, get all this money, commit all these crimes, and then jump up and say, well, he said, oh, there's no white privilege. His brother joined a white supremacist gang. You see what I'm saying? And so he started talking about, I thought it was just very, very strange. So there's a lot of professors, there's a lot of scholars that look deep into this, and the media said, wait a minute, it's 53% of the gang members down in Mississippi are white. They get away with all kind of crimes. And I'm going to show you the receipts in a minute. Give me 2 minutes, Keisha. I'm coming in. Give me 2 minutes. Okay. All right.
Everybody that was popular was screaming something. I remember South Jackson.
There you go.
The biggest conglomerate of white vice lords you'll ever see, and you ever.
No, they're not.
There's a law in
that's not something you typically see. They're not supposed to. They're not. But those lords, they don't respect that. They don't just let anybody in.
In South Jackson back in the early 90s and late 80s, I went to Whitten right down the road. I went to Peoples and I went to Whitten. I went to Wingfield and Forest Hill.
There you go. And they could put that, and they could drop that flag, and they could drop that flag anytime they want and materialize back into society however they want. That's what I'm trying to tell y'all.